thing. Yes.
My question was going to be, how many people who thought they were possessed were diagnosed, in your opinion, incorrectly by psychiatrists who might tend to, because of their own prejudice, want to claim this apparent malady as their own territory? So how many never made it to you because they were incorrectly diagnosed?
A very great number, especially when we come down to a thing called MPDs. It's an abbreviation used by psychiatrists for multiple personality disorders. That is, say, let's take the name Hilda, and Hilda says that she becomes Mary in certain occasions, then she becomes Joan on other occasions, and she becomes Geraldine on third occasion, multiple personality disorder. And for a long time, MPDs were simply analyzed as MPDs. And then, under certain circumstances, they began to find out that it was much more than that. It was a case of demonic possession.
Well, then I would ask, I guess, can a person be possessed by more than one entity?
Oh, yes, and the same demon can possess 3 people at the same time.
Oh, my.
It all depends. The variation is tremendous. And nobody, you see, Art, this is a very dirty, unhealthy, inhuman, insalubrious, wicked, and unnatural process and event, and nobody should touch it with a barge pole except somebody trained, and even then to be very careful, because it's highly dangerous. For instance, if you start any nonsense, real exorcism, and a lot of people don't know the difference between that and therapy, the difference between that and prayer, healing prayer, deliverance prayer as they call it. But if you start something like that and don't finish it, you're going to have trouble for the rest of your life.
Is it reasonable to ask you, when a human being is possessed by a demon, what is the purpose of the possession of an individual?
The destruction of that individual's soul to such a point that it must end up in hell. Hell being a place, a location, an existence which is totally separate from God. The belief is that everybody was created to be happy forever, and God wants everybody to enjoy heaven, the joys of heaven, the perpetuity of heaven, the peace of heaven, and the ecstasy of heaven. The demons, excluded from that and barred from it because of their rebellion, want to make sure that as many human beings as possible don't attain it. And that is done by possession. It never starts suddenly. You don't wake up in the morning and say, gee whiz, I'm possessed. It doesn't happen like that. It's like any addiction. It's like anything that happens slowly. It's bit by bit. Bit by bit, I cede control of my will and my intellect to a demon. And one day, the possession is complete.
Is this a fight, Doctor, between an individual's will and that of the demon?
Well, usually, to be more accurate, it's a fight between the will of the exorcist and the will of the demon.
Well, I guess I meant before you or somebody like yourself has met up with this possessed individual.
Yes.
As the process of takeover is underway, is it a fight between the person's...
Yes.
Yes,
it is, between the person's will and the demon intending to possess. Usually the tendency or the attempt to possess is through deception. For instance, we have, in the northeast corner of America, since 1975, we've had a huge increase in the following type of possession. A young man, say 30-something, 40-something, a young woman, will come and say, look, when I was in college, when I was studying, when I took up residence as a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it was, I made a pact with the devil. I needed money. I needed a position. And I asked him to help me, and he did, but he took over my will and my mind. Now I want to get rid of it. How do I get rid of it?
Well,
we have an increase in that phenomenon, which I never thought we had. Some of them don't even believe in God. Some of them are Jewish, some of them are Buddhist, some of them are Christian, some of them are Protestants or Catholics. There's no profile of the possessible person.
Once you have issued such an invitation, is there any way to go back?
If it has been taken up, then your only recourse is exorcism. that we know of. There may be other recourses. We don't know of any recourse except that.
Are there cases in which a possession is not obvious?
Yes,
I would imagine there are many where the spirit has simply won and is in firm control. I would think that the people who come to you are those who are sort of in the middle of a giant battle.
That's right. When you find somebody, the typical things of somebody throwing themselves on the ground or cursing and spitting and protesting and defecating, urinating and all sorts of protest. What they're doing is protesting, saying, help me.
Yes.
Help me. The perfectly possessed, we call them the perfectly possessed, are those that are completely at peace. And I've known several of the perfectly possessed, and I avoid them like the pest. And you know them only by almost accidental means. Sometimes they're perfectly normal, by the way, and they've got great business probity. They're married, they have children and wives, and they put down responsible jobs. There's nothing wrong there. Now and again, just now and again, it's as it were, a veil is drawn aside, and you see somebody you don't know at all. You just don't know this person, this man, this woman. And there's a completely alien look, a completely alien attitude, and they breathe alienation. And you know then, if you have a nose for it, you know then that they're perfectly possessed and there's nothing to be done about it. The first man I knew like that was called Beedham, John Beedham, and it was a frightening experience because I had known him for years.
In other words, their pact, their deal, they are at peace with and comfortable with their deal.
Right, yes.
I talked to you about the quickening.
Yes.
I didn't even get to all the facets. To me, it's many, many things. But you said there was a huge increase in the number of possessions, and I was going to ask you that. To me, that just adds to the pile. That is true. There's more now?
It's about, since 1975, when I really started in earnest exorcisms in the United States, it's about 800% increase in frequency.
Oh, my.
Frequency. And it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And the one part of the phenomenon is this, Art, that now, for the first time, exorcists and psychiatrists are working closely together. And I work with psychiatrists. I do the spiritual side of it, and they do the psychiatric end of it. There's always a psychiatric preparation and follow-up on after an exorcism.
You mentioned that one psychiatrist simply gave up psychiatry.
That's right. I gave him a code name of Hammond. That's not his real name, but he was very, very skeptical about it all. And finally, I said, "Okay, doctor, look, if you insist, but you must have some protection." He wasn't a Catholic, by the way. he was, and once he went through it, that was it. He would never touch another possessed person. He would never touch psychiatry ever again. He went off and did something else. He was a qualified doctor and became an only MD. And confined himself to that.
Doctor, how frequently do you think psychiatrists who are treating patients, or what percentage of their patients might indeed, instead of suffering psychiatric problems, be suffering some form of possession?
Well over 50% of the cases I have observed.
Wow.
Well over 50% are really possessed by demons, and of course nothing can be done about it. They're diagnosed as schizophrenic, or as MPDs, or as whatever,